Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. On Apple, recommend Apple Podcasts. On Android, we recommend Spotify. Also, check out the Five Reasons YouTube channel for content around the South Florida sports spectrum. Off the Floor, link in the description. Bypass the Apple upcharge, $2.99 per month. Most heat information and conversation. Everything that we're going to be talking about here on this episode, I've put on Off the Floor already, so you would already know it. Check it out. It's Off the Floor. Again, 10 different channels, plus the stage show. Use the link in the description. Also, Prize Picks, use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Put down your $5. You get $50 to play right away. Prize Picks, the official fantasy sponsor of the Five Reasons Sports Network. Legal in the state of Florida, WNBA, baseball, and more. And, of course, NFL preseason as we lead up to the regular NFL season and college football as well. PrizePicks.com. Use the code F-I-V-E. And now, today's episode.
Mercy. Luxurious Heat Nation. Yeah. Mercy and Lago. Down to Biscayne. Yikes. Five on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars. Wearing bubble frogs. Down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's about have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at Five Reasons Sports. I got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. We've been obviously doing past, present, and future. Continue to do the past episodes on the 20th anniversary season of the 2006 championship. Mateo Mayorga will have a new interview. Three-time. We don't want to be on three timelines. Mateo Mayorga will have a new episode up here shortly. Also, we've been doing State of the Heat. We are through 5 of those. We will continue. Others want to get in here, although some seem to be having trouble scheduling with me. But we're going to get into Haywood Highsmith here. And I always tell you that, what we do at the moment something happens and what we can say and what we know is not, because we try to go right away. I mean, Greg and I went right away after the trade. We want to get the content up for you. I try to be very careful about not saying more than I know at the time. And then it does provide some opportunity over the next few days to gather information, to get a little bit more backstory on why things happened and how long they were going on for. Because, Chris, the Heat do not operate in sunlight. All right, it's not just never the way that they've done things. And there are explainers, and again, you can take the explainers for what they're worth. I mean, if you don't believe anything that's said, I just try to believe what I can from those who have told me the truth before. That's the best that you can do when you report. So, Alex, I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory here. Not everything, but what I can say about how the Haywood Highsmith trade came about, because I think it will clarify some things for Heat fans who were like, well, why do they do this now? They didn't have to do this now. What else was going on? This is, as I now understand it, okay? The Heat made a decision at the end of last season to pretty much move on from a couple of guys, Duncan Robinson and Haywood Highsmith. I'm not going to get into a ton of specifics about whose decision that was and all that. I can just say there was a collective decision that was made, that it was time to go in a different direction. Okay. We've already addressed the Duncan Robinson situation. He found a deal with the Detroit Pistons. The Heat at that time took back a player in Simone Fontecchio. I apologize. I'm not going to try to say the rookie's name on this episode, Alex. I'm just letting you know. Okay. They made a deal, and it was really, they allowed Duncan to find a place that he would be comfortable, that he would get paid. That's Detroit, possible contending team close to where he played college ball, and he got pretty decent contract. Okay. To make that deal work, the Heat took back Fontecchio, who they had the option of, and still have the option of, but we'll address this in this episode, until August 29th of waiving and stretching. But of course, that would put his contract on the books. It's not a big contract, but it would put that dead money on the books for this year and the next 2 years. I'll get into more of that later. I want to get to the Highsmith part of this. So that was the first thing with Duncan. They make the trade. They bring in Fontecchio. It's basically, again, a little less money. They weren't planning on keeping Duncan anyway. That's where that was. Now, Highsmith was a different story. They had been looking to move on from Haywood this offseason. Okay, now we can talk about why. I know that he was a particular favorite of Brady and others. His defensive metrics last year were not what they were before. We talked about that. We got into that. Itest said some of that. He was a better defender than a lot of players on the roster, but he wasn't the level of defender than he had been. So again, a little bit of not a young player with a ton of upside. He maximized. Great credit to him. Everybody loves H personally. Good guy. Wasn't really considered to be a part of this going forward. Okay. We've talked about them leaning into their first round picks, leaning into younger. And both of those absences create opportunities potentially for Jaquez, Jovic, others to get more minutes, bigger roles. Okay, Larson, etc. All right. So they're trying to trade Haywood this summer, and there really aren't any takers. Okay, they weren't getting offers of picks. They had conversations with the Nets. The Nets were the one team that's had cap space. We've talked about that a lot. The Nets are not trying to win right now. They're basically, they're positioning it to take players into space. And this is a key point. They don't really care about winning out of the gate this year at all. Okay. So the Nets are one of the teams that the Heat had talked to. I do know that when the Clippers deal came up, when the Clippers contacted the Heat about Norm Powell, that the Heat, one of the things that was an option for them was to trade Kyle Anderson and Haywood for Norm. But the Clippers wanted to use an exception, which Haywood's contract exceeded. So the Heat reluctantly traded K-Love. The Heat were not looking to trade Kevin Love. They wanted to bring him back, and he wanted to come back. And the way he reacted on social media showed you that he wanted to come back. By the way, he's still in Utah, but the expectation is he'll get released some point before the season, bought out, etc., so that he can go, sign with either Cleveland or a contender, somebody that he can help in that way. He can't come back to Miami right now, but he was disappointed. He wanted to stay in Miami. Miami did not want to move him. They wanted him in the locker room this year. But you get Norm Powell, that's a deal that you make. So anyway, Haywood's not included in that deal. There was never any truth to this garbage that's being put out by Jimmy's lackey that, Haywood Highsmith was the holdup in a trade for Kevin Durant. Okay, we've said that. He was not. Okay, again, they didn't want the Wiggins and Rozier contracts. We'll talk about Rozier on another episode. They didn't want the Wiggins and Rozier contracts, and so then the Heat would have had to stack a whole bunch of contracts. It was never about just Haywood, all right? Okay? So anyway, the Heat are looking to trade Haywood. They don't deal him there. And the Nets, and then Haywood gets hurt, okay? Hurts his knee in Baltimore in offseason workouts. And so if the Heat ever had a chance of getting a draft pick for him, that pretty much killed it, okay? So then the Nets circle back to them. The Heat did not want to include a pick, but there were really no other options. There's always concern. Yes, you could have held on to him until the trade deadline, but then teams kind of hold you up because they know that you got to get rid of players to get under the luxury tax, which is what the Heat want to do to be under the repeater. They didn't really want to take the risk of it. And what ties in with this is they really didn't want to waive and stretch Fontecchio because after I'm going to say people in the organization, not just the coaches, others. Okay, a lot of people looked at him and they were like, well, we might be able to work with this player. Okay, like we want to take a look. And it's kind of how they felt about Kyle Anderson last year. And then we saw Kyle Anderson get a role, right? Eventually. So because of that, and then I'll let you get in here. Because of that, they were going to hold on to Fontecchio. Why have the dead money on the books, right? Get under the tax now. Then they signed Drew Smith, who we'll talk about more here, who was always coming back. Okay. and this is no secret, so I can say this. Eric Spoelstra loves Drew Smith. We've said this on hundreds and hundreds of platforms, okay? And I'll talk about what they think Drew may be able to do. But there was always an inclination to bring Drew back, provided that he was healthy. And according to the reports I have, he's ahead of schedule. He's close to 5-on-5s, okay? So if that's the case, they looked at all this. The Nets came back. The Nets are like, we're not going to hold on to this space much longer for you, okay? Give us the second round pick. And that's what happened. The Heat didn't want to give up a second round pick, but that's what they did. So this is all process of other things. The key point is this trade didn't just like happen overnight. These are conversations that are ongoing with other teams, and that's what they decided to do. All right, your early impression of this, or I guess hopefully since you're nodding, I guess I've explained this properly this time. Do you get that? In terms of, we can talk about whether we like it or not, what it means for Drew and others, but do you understand the process and why this ended up being the Heat giving up a second round pick to do something that they were going to do anyway, which was not really keep Haywood in the rotation this year?
Yes, understand it. And I think you did an awesome job kind of explaining, giving the background there and explaining how a situation develops, right? And had giving the background as opposed to, the fans just seeing the results and seeing the final tweet, right, of what was traded. So yeah, like I understand it, and for sure, like all that stuff is really interesting to hear, especially because you're hearing it from their perspective as well, and it explains like some of the stuff that we were already kind of speculating about. Like there's so much to get into here, even though it's with like these guys that like most casual fans don't even really care about, right? Like Haywood, Drew Smith, Simone Fontecchio, who a lot of fans probably don't even know is on the team, right? I just think it's funny because like there's so many different paths they could have taken, and it's just interesting to me that this is the one they went with, because you mentioned like they ended up just giving the second way down the line, and we know they are more than willing to give up seconds. Not that they want to, but like they're willing to use that if it serves a different purpose in a trade. Like those are the ones that they've been very willing to use. Where like the first round picks, guys that they've drafted, I feel like they value those obviously more than a second round pick, but just they value those a lot. Whereas a second round pick is like, okay, that's going to be what we part with. We're willing to, take that opportunity cost and work around it, and second rounders and undrafted and all that type of stuff that we already know about the Heat, right? But outside of that, you mentioned waiving and stretching Fontecchio, right? And that possibility, and you reported that when they traded for him, that was a possibility. Then that started to heat up a couple of weeks ago with the international reporter. And I think it does kind of all tie together very nicely, because an underrated part about this is, yeah, like Fontecchio could have been waived and stretched, and the deadline would have been August 29, and that explains why they decided to make a move like this right now. But also they could have just waived and stretched Highsmith. He was also on a 1-year contract, makes less, so it would have been a much smaller hit as far as like, so when you waive and stretch a player, when it's a guy on an expiring contract like Fontecchio or Highsmith, their money for this season gets divided into 3. So it's essentially, a situation where now, let's say you waive and stretch Haywood, instead of paying him $5 million this season, you'd be paying $1.67 million over the next 3 years. That would have gotten them easily below the luxury tax line. So even if they decided like, okay, we're going to keep Fontecchio, we're kind of, we like Haywood, we respect Haywood, everything he does, we're kind of, we want to move on. If that was the decision, they could have waived and stretched Haywood. And then it's interesting to me that ultimately they decided to, instead of pay the $1.67 million for the next 3 years, which I'm not saying is like this awesome, alternative, they just decided to just pay up the second for 7 years down the line. And that was kind of their ultimate calculation there. That's what intrigues me the most about it, is like, I'm not a fan of the wave and stretch, but like they basically had to choose between they put themselves in a position. Let me say that, because it's not like this happened to them. Because of past decisions, they were in this position where they had to choose from a couple of bad decisions. And like you mentioned, if you would have waited to the deadline to try to flip an expiring like Fontecchio or Highsmith, maybe it could have gotten done, but not many teams have space. You mentioned the leverage that you get, that another team gets from using the trade deadline. And not only that, there is no more wave and stretch as a backup plan.
Right.
If a trade doesn't go through, at that point, that's it. Like you can't do anything else. Right. So I understand why they came down to this point.
They probably would. Alex, they probably would have had to have, at the very least, used that second round pick or something like it to to get a deal done with other teams understanding the leverage that they had. And a lot of this does play into the Rozier situation, which we're not going to get into on this podcast because I want to get into it another. But if it was easy to move Terry Rozier right now, they would.
And they're also here because of that trade.
What they are. No, and I'm not going to argue otherwise, nor would they. I mean, the guy forgot how to play basketball. I mean, they're as mystified as an organization as we are about that. Okay. And nobody says anything bad about Terry as a human being. It's just he just forgot how to play. And they don't understand why. Look, the coach didn't understand it last year, which is why he kept playing him 40 minutes. But I think, and we'll talk about Rozier. I want to get to that more specifically and the other issues that they're dealing with there. But there was no guarantee they were going to be able to move off of him. I think it's unlikely that they will, at least at this point. And so it's like then you are sort of running into dwindling options. And it's kind of like, okay, the Nets have the space now. Haywood's not going to be a part of the rotation. He's a bit of a progress stopper for others. And on the other side of this, I'll get into who may fill his role, which plays into this. But they probably would have had to have dumped a second at that point anyway. Your other point about the second round picks, I'm just going to leave it here because again, I don't want to focus on this too much in this episode. But you can believe this or not believe this. If they'd had another second round pick 2 years ago, they would have taken Kashad Johnson. Okay, they got him undrafted. I've been told by more than one person if they'd had a second round pick this year, they would have taken Vlad Golden. Right? You knew that was coming, okay? But I'm just saying that that's their attitude about second round picks is that yes, they got Larson, who probably would not have slipped out of it. Now we're talking about Larson as a primary rotation player, but I'm just telling you they don't view second round picks the same. We've talked about this. They don't view it the same as others because they believe in their scouting staff to be able to find these guys undrafted. And I will say that's the one thing, whatever criticisms that people have of them the past few years, the one thing you really can't argue with is that Adam Simon, Keith Askins, that whole group, okay, Chet, they find those guys like they have. Now we'll see. I don't know about this latest crop, okay? They have not shown anything yet. But the guys we talk about and we bemoan them losing, right? Or whatever. Some bemoan them losing or not getting. Gabe, Max, Caleb, Duncan, Haywood. Well, all five of those guys, they found some other way. So that's why they don't quite look at second round picks quite the same as others do. I do want to get into who fills the Haywood role here, though, a little bit, because this does play into it. So let's do that. Before we do, I want to talk about a great sponsor, the 5 Reasons Sports Network. If you've been feeling tight in your hips, stiff in your spine, or your body's just out of alignment, listen up. The Align Training Method by Nanette is offering a free 30-minute virtual movement assessment. And yes, completely free. This isn't some generic workout plan. You got a personalized breakdown of your posture, hip function, and movement patterns so you can train smarter, avoid injury, and move better overall. It's great for anyone working through pain, coming back from injury, or just looking to reset their body mechanics. So head to thevaulttraining.online to book your session. Again, that's thevaulttraining.online. Book your session. This is where smarter movement begins. Okay, so here's another part of this, right? We know that Spo loves Drew Smith. He has been his biggest backer. He comes in every day. He works. Okay, he's worked his way back from one traumatic injury. Now he has a more traumatic injury. He is ahead of schedule. We've been hearing that for a while. Major Passons, our network's been on top of that. I heard he's one-on-ones, and now he's getting closer to 5-on-5s. So this is a player who could be ready for training camp. Now, Haywood was not going to be ready for training camp, most likely. That was 8 to 10 weeks. So as far as this idea of, well, you've got to bring back an injured player. Well, you were bringing back an injured player anyway. It's just, generally a meniscus tear, which is, I think, what Haywood had. Okay, more of a minor knee injury, is not this, quite the same as an Achilles tear. So Drew has more to come back from in terms of lateral movement. Adele talked about that recently on the podcast. But I can tell you that there is a belief internally that Drew will be a better wing and perimeter defender, even coming off the injury, than Haywood was. Do you buy that?
That's an interesting one because you keep saying that, and I know it's not you saying that. I know this is what you're hearing from them, and it's very interesting that the word wing keeps getting thrown in there. Is that a hint of like where that they see him as more than just a guard defender, as kind of we have all seen him? Because that is very interesting to me and almost a little bit concerning. Look, I'm not here to trash Drew Smith. I'm really not. He is a player deserving of a minimum contract. I think he is somebody who earned that in the sense of like what he did on the floor. The tough part about it is these injuries. And I understand, like, modern the modern medicine and the game and all that. Like, people come back so much earlier than they used to. I get that, right? Maybe an Achilles tear is not the end of your career as it used to be, right? For many back in the day. I understand that. But to come back he came off a torn ACL and then a torn Achilles tendon the year after. And now you expect him to still be not only at the top of his game on perimeter defense wise, but also sizing up. And I understand, like, we saw it in flashes that he can size up and defend guys bigger than him. Like, the guy can obviously really defend, like, I don't think there's any question about that. If you're watching these games, and he didn't play that many over these past few seasons that he's been on the team because of these injuries. But in those games that he did play, the guy can obviously defend. There's no doubt about it. I just think I'm starting to get concerned that they're going to ask him to do too much. Now, maybe that's, maybe I'm reaching a little bit there. Ultimately, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he's just right back into that kind of role that he was in before. This rotation thing, like, we did that rotation episode a few weeks ago. Now it's kind of like up in the air again, right? Like, we expected Larson to get those minutes, and he probably will, right? But if you're counting Drew Smith as a wing defender, where does that leave Jaquez? Where does that leave Fontecchio? Other guys that are kind of in that back end of the rotation category, and you don't know exactly like what their minutes and role is going to be yet, like, because we haven't seen it yet. I'm just wondering how Drew plays into that. And it's like, if you're starting Norman Tyler together, Davion and Drew, is that are you kind of like, one of those two guys are going to be in the lineups after that at some point throughout the game? You get what I mean? Like, is that their vision? I'm just trying to understand it. Like, I'm not trying to trash Drew, because I do think, like, he got a minimum contract, and the whole 3 years thing is super. Like, they basically got him on a minimum deal for 1 year, and then they can just decide to bring him on for the minimum for the next 2 years. Like, there's no risk attached to it whatsoever. It's just that I think it's the fact that move, like, Drew has become like this like the face of, like, oh, the Heat bringing back a player that nobody cares about, but they don't care what you care about. Like, they care about what they care about, right? He follows, like, their system. He plays defense. He plays hard, right? Like, he obviously earned that. But then it's like, you just traded Haywood in a second to get under the luxury tax, and then you follow it up with signing Drew, right? So it's like,
the same thing happened. But the same thing happened. I remember last year, the day they signed Drew was after they didn't get somebody else, right? Wasn't it? Was it Dame? I think it was Dame too. It was exactly the same day.
Well, Dame was 2 years ago.
Okay, so what was it last year? There was somebody last year that we were talking about a lot, and it didn't happen. But then they signed Drew, and so he gets all this hate. But then the reality is, in the 4 or 5 weeks that he played, fans liked the guy. There was a huge turnaround, and this. Every lineup he was in was positive. Like, he made their lineups better when he was on the floor, and I still believe he would have been starting. If he had stayed healthy. Spo was trending that way, even though Spo was still trying to wring a little more out of the Rozier thing, because Spo, like everybody else, could not figure out why Terry forgot how to play basketball. So but they had, and then of course they would not have traded for Davion if Drew was healthy. Okay. That move probably doesn't happen if Drew is healthy, because they had found their guard defender. So I understand. Look, I understand the fans' frustration with wanting the bigger name. I'm just telling you, and we've said it over and over. Eric Spoelstra loves this guy. Okay, Eric Spoelstra has believed since the beginning that Drew Smith is going to be a better NBA player than Gabe Vincent, and he was Gabe's biggest defender early on when people didn't really see the vision for Gabe. And then you saw Drew on the floor last year, and you're like, well, wait a second, hold on, like. I think part of it is he just changed his haircut. Like, people, I think that got half of the fan base behind him. And then it was like, I'm serious. Like, this is how weird people are. And then all of a sudden, like, they see him on the floor, and they're like, wait a second. Like, he makes plays, he guards up, and he was making open shots. Like, he doesn't play outside of himself. He does what he's supposed to do. Now,
back in the basket a little bit. He was showing some stuff, man.
He had some really good stretches. I get it. It's the injuries, and now it's also that they're paying Davion $12 million a year, so they have a guard defender.
They chose this last, because again, they do have another roster spot, but we all know, like, are they really going to go back over the luxury tax after trading a second, right, to get under it? So, like, they basically used their last functional roster spot, at least until the second half of the season, when it becomes prorated and all that stuff, when they can maybe use the 15th spot. But they used their last functional roster spot on Drew Smith instead of another big man, right? Instead of a Kai Jones or whatever other big man you want to
They're not
throw out
close on
there.
another big. We'll do another episode on this too. I'm marking him down. They're not really close on another big, by the way. I
And
know
that
we've
tells
talked
you
about
where
Kai
they're at.
Jones a lot.
They're
It does.
Bam
It
and Ware
does.
are
But
going to be their fives. They're not going to play a backup five. And I'm
yes,
not saying this is
and
right because I do think they should have more depth on the roster. And I'm
Mhm.
not sold on Vlad Golden for as much as they think he's a second round pick. Whatever. Like I
he's
defer
going to
to
play.
them.
He's going to
Vlad
play.
Golden
I'm
is not
not
going to
sold
be in the
on it either.
rotation. I would
He's
bet
not going to be in the
any amount
rotation,
of
but
money
he
on
is
that.
going. I'm telling you, he's going to be up a lot on that two-way because they have. First thing, okay, a couple. There's so many tentacles of this, but one thing is, as I've said, I'm not convinced Ware's starting next to Bam yet. Okay, I'm not. Okay, I think there is a chance that Nico starts, and I think if that's the case, then Ware is your backup center. It doesn't really matter
Either way,
because the three of them are rotating. I know, but I'm saying that everybody's convinced Ware's going to start, and I understand why people lean that way. But I'm just telling you, like Nico has grabbed their attention this offseason, okay, and why wouldn't he? Right, it's going to be a competition, and for roster balance, strictly roster balance and rotation balance, it kind of makes sense to bring Khalil off the bench. But I'm not saying it's definitely happening, but I'm saying that's a possibility. Either way, though, you need a fourth guy. Now, could it be Kishad? Yes. Okay. Now, I don't want Kishad playing backup five, okay, or small ball five, but could he be a 3-4 wing defender? I don't know. Spo likes him too. Okay. So that's even though he hasn't played him yet. So we don't really know what he has. Okay, but they gave him look. We talk about the Drew Smith. Let's just be honest here. And I think Kashad's a great kid, right? We talk about the Drew Smith getting a roster spot. Well, Kashad Johnson's done less than Drew Smith, and he has a roster spot, right? Like which
another guy
roster
who's
spot
like
are
a
we
second
talking
round
about?
pick.
Yes, they view him that way, right? They had Larson ahead of him.
Exactly, but I'm not again like I just we've kind of made that joke for years. Like he Twitter about like a first rounder, like a second rounder.
Derek Jones Jr.
Yes, Derek Jones Jr. was like a first rounder. That's something that always.
Right.
I love that. But no, like
Right.
Kashad, like I get it. Like they like Kashad, they like Golden. How
You went mute, but that's okay. Well, I hear you. They like both. Look,
neither is going to be in the rotation, I think.
I don't think they are either. But I'm saying that you're going to see some nights until they go get somebody, which I don't think is pressing. And they can't look. They've tried to move Rozier for a big. They're not getting anything. We'll talk about this in another episode. As I said, they're not getting anything for Rozier while he's still under investigation by the FBI. It's just not going to happen.
They're not getting anything.
Well, that killed it though. Like that's not happening. I mean, and FBI investigations, they can go on forever. Like the NBA investigated Terry and cleared him, but the FBI part of it, like that's just going to go on. Teams don't want to take that on, so like you're not going to get a functional big even for a guy in the last year of his contract with that kind of money for him. So we are really looking at what they have right now is likely what it is, and then. It's basically bringing Golden up from Sioux Falls. The guy who's going to be in Sioux Falls is the first round pick.
Oh,
and that's who's going to be in Sioux Falls. Well, that's another episode.
Well, yeah, his role definitely got messed with a little bit with the Drew signing. But just the last thing I want to say on this, like it really seems like to go along with your point, it seems like Kashad and Golden are going to be like the break in case of emergency guys, at least for this point, right? Like if something happens where they need more front court players in the rotation. And then I think at some point, like towards the second half of the season, there's gonna be enough space under the luxury tax where they can use that last spot. But I do think those are going to be the guys now. And I think up to that point, I do think it's going to be whether Bam and Ware start together or not. I think one of Bam or Ware is going to be on the floor at all times. And then, when Jovic is not on the floor, I think it's going to be a quote unquote small ball four, which is going to be like
Wiggins.
a Wiggins, right? It's going to be one of those 6'8", 6'9" guys.
I think so too. I think so too. And I will keep saying this and we'll close it here. We're talking about a whole bunch of other guys. Okay. Ultimately, this season's success, okay, for better or worse, and we've talked about it's not that high a bar, but high a level that I think I can get to. But the success this season, to me, is based on Hero Powell fit, whether Bam gets off to a much faster start than he did last season, and Nico. Okay, I know people are going to say where, but I think Jovic is the absolute X factor. If they can figure out a way to unleash what he does well, Okay. I do think it raises them half a level. I'm not saying they're going all the way up here, but and the guy who is clearly marked for more time as a key rotation piece is Pelle Larsson. That's where I'm at after this offseason. We can talk about Kasparis down the road, okay, and developing him. And again, you want to light a fire under where. Who's that?
Pelle is going to be playing a lot this season, just to your point.
He's going to play a lot. He's a 25 plus minute player this year. They liked everything he did this offseason. They have an investment in him. Hawkes is I don't know. I think that's more of a question mark. Okay, he has to prove it in camp. I think Larsson has already shown them. Look, there's a role for that guy clearly. Okay, everything they put on his plate in the summer league, he handled, and we already knew he has competitiveness and some defensive chops. And now it's okay. Can he make shots consistently? Yeah, that's it. That's it. But other than that, like that, he's a Miami Heat long-term rotation player, I think. And I think, and Jovic has the bigger upside if they can tap into it at age 22. All right, Alex, appreciate it. We'll save some of this for other episodes. We are going to do a full Rozier episode. They've tried to move him. It's not that, and again, it's nothing personal against them. It's just it's time to move on. But they don't. It's tough to move a guy under an FBI investigation. It just is, even if he's been cleared somewhere else. All right, Alex, appreciate it. Thanks to our sponsors. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.